A pretty good technique here to share with you. Today we're going to do it as two parts. The first, we're going to learn a bit about Start VR, because there's a lot going on in VR and how does it all work and how's it all put together, and they've got quite a unique spin on it, which is why it's working. So the first piece we'll be talking about Start VR, and the second piece we'll be talking about the sales. We'll go through a few techniques, and then I'll talk with Kain about a few of the stories that he's got. And in the middle, or at the end, according to Beck's master plan, we will break for a bit of food. So thanks for coming in. I'm not going to talk any longer now, but other than to just ask you all to please put your hands together and welcome Kain.
Thanks, Ben.
We've had a system meltdown. We've got to reboot.
Okay.
And then
All right. Well, I might just stand around awkwardly at the front of the crowd here. Just who's tried VR? Let's start with that. Okay, cool. About half the room. So who's tried, there's mobile VR, which is like a plastic cardboard headset, yeah. Who's then tried like the bigger end of town, like the big, okay. So you guys who are putting your hands up, are you VR enthusiasts? What is VR? Oh, fantastic, great. All right, this is good, great, okay. Virtual reality, that's right, we're talking about virtual reality. And I'll go into a bit of the presentation, and part of what we do is the larger umbrella of all this information is called extended reality. So this includes a range of different technologies from augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. So to give you what that spectrum means, virtual reality is something that you put on that covers your eyes. So it takes up your full field of vision, and then your brain is convinced that what you're seeing is real. So you can be anywhere. You can be transported to another universe, you can be transported to a classroom on the other side of the world, but we can create any type of environment we want. And then augmented reality is where, through the use of glasses or through our smartphones or tablets, we can look at the real world through the camera, but then additional digital information is overlaid over the top. So I might look at you and I might see your LinkedIn profile appear above your head and some ideas and connections of what we work with. So it taps into sort of, live, big data to sort of, bring a digital layer over the top of reality. And then mixed reality is something in between, but that's a contentious term which I won't go into today. Let me know when we'll reset and I'll stop my babble. It's still resetting?
now we have to do an update.
Oh, great.
An update.
New Windows update? Great, fantastic.
Thanks, folks. I know this is what you all came here for, so we're off to a good start.
Please.
How far off are we from making it look good? It's just horrible.
Ah, right. You've not seen good stuff then.
I've been to Japan to the massive studios.
Mhm.
That's where you pay $10-12 for an experience, and it's still blocking. It's just really blocking still. And that was supposed to be the best VR in the country or in Japan at the time. And that was early this year. So how many are we a few years away, or soon, hopefully? It's 4K or?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that'll have to happen for us to get further. So obviously with VR, we're dealing with much bigger amounts of data. So the things we look at on a phone or on a computer screen is quite constrained. So if we think of a computer screen being the resolution of super high resolution, we look at something like that and we go, that's lifelike, that's realistic, I think that's high quality. Now take that same quality, do that with it. Like it's exorbitantly large, the amount of data that you have to do. And part of that is the lenses, the quality of the lenses. A lot of it is to do about the processing power of the computers, to be able to sort of drive all that kind of stuff. And then when you realize that it has to operate it has to deal with your head movement and live tracking and work at least 60 to 120 frames per second, there's a lot of technical things that are coming. So we're seeing the quality get better all the time. I'm hoping some of the stuff that you saw, last year was the result of, it's changing so quickly. So I would like to think that some of the stuff we've done is better quality than that. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities and we'll get better. So then we get into the dark questions of, the Fermi paradox, what's real and what is not. I think there's a bunch of people out there who believe that we might already be living in another reality. But that's a conversation for another day. That's not really sales related. That gets a bit dark and twisted. But I'm happy to have that one with you later. Yes, so I think it's probably 5 years away till we see an evolutionary leap of being indistinguishable from reality. Yeah. Yeah, great. This is a great update, Patter.
Did you assess the conflict? How are we going about?
Ooh. State your question again, sorry?
The conflict between the visual and the sense of movement.
The motion sickness and, yeah, that's right. So Where are we at with that? Again, so once we have better input devices as well, once we start receiving better sort of haptic input, the speed at which the systems got latency, that's correct, can react, all that kind of stuff is going to get better. I think there are always people that are going to be sensitive to that type of technology as well. There are different things with motion, wind, other sort of external impacts that'll help drive that. You sound like you know exactly what all that's about anyway. I guess once we move away from 3DOF experiences as well, which is 3 degrees of freedom, just 360 degrees, into more free roaming experiences, and as the hardware gets better, that should alleviate a lot of that. But people get their VR legs. That's the other thing. The first time can be dizzying, but then it grows pretty quickly, and you can adapt to it. I think people, certainly the younger generations, will adapt to it straight away.
Oh. How you doing, folks?
La, da, da, da.
Doing well.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
we were just thinking we'll have to shut the whole system down and just reboot in like 2 minutes. Is that all right?
In 2 minutes. All right, well, we're doing a good VR Q&A here, so that's good.
Yeah.
Learning about
All right.
the VR ecosystem. So we've learned what VR is. We know when it's going to be good enough to look real, and the vestibular question was about when are people going to stop feeling sick when they use it. So that'll happen too.
Got a question here?
Yeah.
how is VR?
Oh, so here, yep.
Maybe you can just enlighten us why people in VR are not making much money. It would easily occupy 2 minutes.
The shortest answer is that VR is expensive to make. Good VR is expensive to make. People are only really prepared to pay for high quality VR, and the amount they're prepared to pay for that does not match the budgets at which it takes to create those experiences. And also the hardware is still very expensive. So we are still ahead of the curve in wide adoption of the technology. It's still too expensive for people to get in. Those that are early adopters or have invested in the technology to move into the space, if the content doesn't necessarily match the money that they've spent on it as well. So we will reach a fulcrum point. We'll reach a point where the technology is cheap enough, the experiences are good enough, independent developers such as ourselves can get a return, our investment into it. We'll then, once there is money to be made in the consumption of VR, we'll start to see a lot more companies jump in. We'll start seeing the AAA titles, the film studios invest a lot more money in that space. But in the meantime, it's down to the indies who can try and still put forward great ideas, do it at a lower rate, and hopefully tap into a way of monetizing it as well. Oh, wow, this is great. Let's not worry about the presentation. Yeah.
This is good.
Sorry. What's that? So it all depends on who your market is and what type of content you're creating. So, most of the conversation in the VR space talks about the consumer market for VR and for AR. And if you ever read any articles that talk about VR is dead and how massively disappointing it may be, or AR is going to save us and blah, 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 that's generally talking about the consumer market. And that's making content that is adopted by the population at large. But then the other half is enterprise or corporate implementation of technology, where you don't need to have a large consumer, you don't have to need a lot of volume to sort of make that sort of part of the business profitable. You just need to be able to affect change within an organization to make sure that it's worth spending money in that area. So with our business, we have, we create original content that we try to sell directly to the consumer, and we do that at a loss. That's where we learn to create these amazing experiences, where we try and break new ground in storytelling and hope that we can eventually work out a business model. But we also then have a strong commercial side of our business, which is where we generally make our money. So we're selling VR and AR experiences to corporations who want to do training or internal communications. They're looking to find new ways to generate new businesses. So people are starting to now use this technology as a means to extend their own business opportunities as well. So that's where most of the bread and butter is in VR at the moment, and we've been always working in that area to build up that side of the business. So in regards to where does the challenge lie in the commercial side, the challenge is in finding businesses who are happy to invest early or commit early to a technology that is unresolved and changing all the time. New headsets coming out every 2 years. You've got internal IT departments who are somewhat reluctant to bring in a new technology when they've just locked down, bring your own devices in with iPhones and things like that. Don't upset the apple cart. We've just got off Windows 95. So that's a challenge in that respect. But that's where we see the biggest opportunity and where most of our business has grown out of. And then the consumer side is, how do you find a niche market? How do you get someone to pay a certain amount of money? How do you keep production costs down? How do you market to them? Who are they? All the systems and pipelines aren't in place, from marketing channels, distribution. That's all still to be invented. So you make a film, there's a chain of cinemas, and there's a marketing stream by which you can release your film or your piece of content. It's just there's systems in place due to 100 years of work. Same with television, same with other sort of media. VR, that doesn't sort of exist yet. So you can't even get down to the demographic profile about who's using it. Chances are it's a 24-year-old male. Yes.
I was going to say that in the arts, which is the area I'm interested in, there are very few teams of people who have the technology, but often that technology is being used because they don't have partnerships with business and people with money to make those films. So it might be worth pursuing linkage with people who are already in the arts. For example, over in America, Sundance
Yep.
Film Company has a massive lab, experimental, and Lynette Morwood's there.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a great exponent of the art.
Yes.
So there's lots of different partnerships to be made. You might not, areas in which you might not consider looking, but the technology's there and the people who use
Excuse me.
the business who are more likely to have the money.
Thanks.
You touch on a really good point, and that comes down to the type of business you are as well. So, VR is still broad and it touches a range of different industries as well. I get into my presentation eventually about who we are in the market, and we're kind of a mix of storytellers, designers, and technologists as well. And we think that's the perfect blend to be able to sort of create VR that's compelling. So our unique our point of difference is that we create interactive cinematic VR. So our goal is to try and reinvent how stories are told inside VR.
Just take it.
So because of that, yes, we have a strong focus on the arts, and we work with Screen New South Wales, Screen Australia, and we actually have our own VR artist in residency program. So we're the only one in the country that has done it, and kind of very similar to the Kaleidoscope or the Sundance model is that we invite 2 artists every 6 months, or an artist every 6 months, to from traditional media, whether that's dance, theatre, film, television, sculpting, who might have an idea about taking their art into this new medium, and we work with them to sort of take their idea to a commercialised level where they can either get more funding or release it to the public as well. So we're currently working with the creator of it's gone, sorry, it'll come to me later on.
Opinion on the healthcare industry, how suitable from a healthcare.
How will VR be relevant for the healthcare industry? In so many different ways. I mean, it's being used at the moment. People are using it to treat PTSD. People are using it to help people suffering from Alzheimer's or degenerative brain disorders. It's being used to help the elderly. It's being used to train physicians in how to operate remotely. So, I guess the thing about VR, there's not an industry in which it won't touch. And there's not an industry that it's not going to be specific and useful for. So it could be useful in mining, it could be useful in education, it could be used in healthcare, it could be useful in entertainment, it could be used in telecommunications. Like there's rarely an industry that it won't be relevant to. Yeah. Great, this is good.
Where does Australia sit in the VR market worldwide? Is there any countries that you'd be surprised to hear leaders in the VR industry?
Where does Australia sit in the market? Look, I think what we see in Australia is we see a lot of innovation, and we see a lot of companies punch above their weight, like most Australian companies do. We tend to sort of, take on big challenges like this and do it well with very small teams. You've got the guys at the back doing, Township Tales as well, who are, bringing this sort of, large open world sort of game mechanic into VR. We tend to do more with a lot less, so we tend not to have as much fundraising. In our space and where we operate in that sort of cinematic storytelling space, I'd probably say we're in the top 10 in the world, but there's probably only 2 or 3 companies in that space that aren't heavily funded. So we do well to create experiences that look far more expensive than have had budget spent on it. Our most expensive project we work on, original project, is probably around about $1.5 million to create a 20-minute piece of content, whereas some of our contemporaries in the US have probably had budgets between $8 and $50 million to create something of similar kind of size. And I think ours is comparable by result.
Alrighty.
All right.
Kain.
Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
So unfortunately, it froze again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're happy to project to the room, just check that it progresses on your slides just to make sure.
Yes.
We're all
Yeah.
good. So you guys.
Cool.
can-
So, apologies, we broke the other bit.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay.
anyway, yeah, please.
So can
take
you
it
hear me
away.
all right? Do I need the microphone anyway? All right. Great. Excellent. All right.
I'm gonna take a seat.
Hi, my name's Kain. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Start VR. This is normally the type of presentation I give to groups of people or to clients, so it kind of covers the full spectrum of what we do, though often, depending on the client, we'll be very specific and targeted about the types of case studies we show. So this is more a general, broad view of what we do. Leading Immersive Innovation Studio, this is a dynamic piece of text that changes every couple of days as we try and lock down exactly how we position ourselves. I'm liking this one at the moment. I guess part of the scope of the industry at the moment is changing so dynamically. The language that resonates with an audience needs to be adapted accordingly. And, immersive means that you are transported to another place through the technology. And I guess the innovation means that we don't just do things on screens on your headsets. It could be, on mobile devices. It could be using other sort of head-mounted displays. It could be using projection mapping. Either way, the level of immersion is important there. So we're a believer that immersive computing is the next evolutionary leap in the way human beings communicate and in the next level of computing. So we've had the PC revolution that happened from the 70s into the 80s into the 90s. The internet in the 90s dramatically transformed how we communicated and how we conducted businesses in brand new industries. And the behemoths, technology behemoths we have today are mostly responsible for coming out of the internet. Mobile technology transformed things all over again when we had the smartphone, and new businesses and new ways of communication have spun off that. And immersive technology is going to be the next leap after that. And some people are also calling this the final medium. Because if you think that you can recreate anything, any situation at all, and for the brain to believe that it is real, all of our existing technologies or communication tools can be brought under one banner. From theatre through radio, telecommunications, filmmaking, simulation, training, all of that can be done inside immersive computing. And you'll often hear, is it VR, is it AR, is it MR, does it mean anything, does it really matter? These are just clumsy tools that we have to use today because we don't have the language that summarizes and makes sense to us in how we use it. We won't be using these types of terms in 5 to 10 years when this is commonplace. We don't talk about the information superhighway anymore, We don't describe the web as being a literal spider web or cars on a freeway. We don't talk about digital media anymore versus traditional media. It is just what envelops us and is all around us. So the technology, how we will describe that technology will change, but at the moment there's an umbrella term called XR or extended reality, which is an overarching digital layer over our physical lives. We've been in business for about 3.5 years. We saw that the wave was breaking with VR and very much wanted to jump on board and be a part of this next evolution. Certainly my background has always been in that bridge between broadcast and interactivity, working across television and interactive media through digital and TV. We've managed to develop a business that is nearly profitable. I say nearly profitable, we're very close. We still have a minor burn rate, but which is comparatively, for a lot of sort of startups, we've done well to commercialize VR, and our goal is to commercialize it as quickly as possible so that we don't have to rely on investment or external forces, we can build and run a sustainable business that grows and is ready for when the full market reaches its massive potential. To give you an example, we've done $750,000 of new business in the last 2 months, which is extraordinary given that normally during December and January, that is the death knell months. That's where things get really quiet and very, very difficult to work with. Because we're still a studio that relies on commercial work, that's quite a lumpy road. So this has helped set us up for a big year, and we're on track for doing about 3 to 4 million this year. I guess a big part of why we've been successful is because we bring together a team that focuses on design, story, and technology. I think there are a lot of VR companies that are technology first. The people that are excited by the gadgets, they're excited by the hardware, and they could tell you about the specs of the drive and the graphics card. I can't, I won't. I gave up on that a long time ago. For us, this is very much about the experience. This is about what the consumer experiences at the end, what type of feelings they walk away with. So our team of designers, filmmakers, storytellers means that we're using this as a technology to transform how people engage with themselves in a social environment and inside the immersive computing. I think as a result of that as well, we've tried to build a team that is professional and approachable. We tend not to rely on technology terms. Our lead sales guy doesn't even talk about headsets as a technology. He calls them the goggles. And that in itself, just by breaking down that and not being about technology, makes it very easy to have conversations with people who may be quite nervous about investing in or moving into this technology space. We've won some awards. We're really proud of what we've managed to achieve. We've toured a lot of international film festivals. We've been recognised for our interactive cinematic storytelling that we create. It's quite unique, and it's helped enable and establish that reputation around the world, which means we can do entertainment-based work, but as well as inside a corporate environment where storytelling is still essential, because that's mostly what they're trying to do, is tell their internal brand story or tell a training story or communicate their brand message as well. Look, the best choose to work with us, and that's as a result by making sure that the quality of the work we do is very high. They're very concerned about the business outcomes and the KPIs of the business, which is always an essential part of our language throughout. We tend not to talk about the technology, we tend to talk more about the outcomes, and that means it puts our customers at ease, and that means that leads to even more work moving forward. So we've been very lucky to work with some amazing brands, and around about 40% of those brands continue to work with us as well. We'll find that it'll start with a small project, an idea. We've got this thing, can we do a VR project? The answer, of course, is always yes. After we ask them, does it need to be in VR? If it doesn't, then we tend to say, you should really think about doing this on video or on the web or as an activation. If it's not really important to do it in VR, we tend to push them back into other sort of medium, because we want to make sure that people are using VR for the right reasons and not, creating the basically misusing it. So I think there's a lot of people's first touch points with VR is often a roller coaster experience or some terrible 360 film, and then people don't really get the full potential. We want to make sure that that's not the we're creating. We've produced over 130 projects. So I think we're on 138 at the moment. So for an industry that is still so small and nascent, we've been very, very prolific in the work that we do, and I think that's meant that other customers feel more confident about investing in the space and in the technology. And I alluded to this before when we were talking about the arts. What we specialise in was what we call interactive cinematic storytelling. So we create environments that are immersive, that make you believe that you are there, that feel like you are there, that are cinematic in scope. They don't feel like cheap video. It feels real. It feels beautiful, and the quality is very high. We think that's the sweet spot for what we do, and that's where we're trying to drive a path of how we feel VR should be experienced, and we also feel this is the way that we can take VR to the mainstream. So if we've got people at home watching Netflix, how can we create an experience that is not going to mean that they have to run on the spot, holding a gun and shooting people? How can we create an experience that is cinematic and enjoyable and fun, but they have some level of participation in it? How can they be involved in a Bond story? Can they be helping James Bond, track down Dr. No, rather than being James Bond running around like an idiot? That's not necessarily what people want to do when they come home. So 360 video is an area where a lot of people start off in VR. It's a capture technology. It is not VR. It's just a means to create some type of immersive experience. But most 360 content is linear. So it plays just like a regular video. There's a start and there's an end. You've got video games that offer a lot more interactivity, a lot more flexibility to expand and a universe and to move into. And obviously that's where a lot of the commercialization models have been in the early stages of VR. That's where people are making money. And then you've got film and television. You've got two massive industries that are looking to break into this world, but they don't know how to do it without cannibalizing their business models. They don't know how to do it without sacrificing the quality of how they make their experiences, and they don't want to give their brands away for free. So we believe that interactive cinematic virtual reality is that sweet spot that brings all of those different disciplines together and creates something that's quite unique. So I've just wanted to show you a couple of pieces that we've done. These are trailers mostly, to give you a sense of the scale of what we've done. Awake is a project we launched in December of last year, and that was the 1.5 million. I shouldn't share that. It didn't cost that much. It cost far less than that. Sorry. But this is a very bold and ambitious project. So as I mentioned, 360 video is kind of like the camera we've got at the back there. 360 video is a fixed position, so we can film this world and we can see everything that happens around it, but you're fixed in position. What if you wanted to create an experience where you could move around, where I could walk around you as an audience, or I could walk around you as an actor? There's not many ways you can do that at the moment. The only other way to do it is using 3D animation. So, you have to model a character, and because of that, it tends to look very stylized. It tends to look like an animation, or it tends to look like a video game, and as a result, you tend to lose that sense of immersion and the nuance in performance. Awake uses a technology called volumetric performance capture, which is we capture real performance of a human being or actors, multiple actors on a set, and there are 160 cameras around them that capture their performance and turn them into a hologram, and then apply those multiple 160 video textures onto this 3D model. And that means for the very first time, we can actually have real human performances inside VR. And the level of immersion and empathy and connection to that character then changes dramatically. This is very early stages. This particular project uses 20 minutes of volumetric capture, which is the largest of any kind in the world. It's the only VR project that has two performers happening in a scene at any given time. The technology isn't there yet. It's still, still a little bit odd, but the level of immersion is quite incredible. So unfortunately, I can't give you all of this 20-minute experience right now, so this is just a little trailer so you get a sense of the quality of how we made it. We worked with Animalogic, who are responsible for the Lego movies. They helped us with a lot of the set design and production. We worked with Microsoft, who used the volumetric performance capture. Screen Australia were a big contributor to getting this project off the ground. And we do a lot of work with them to help bring artists into this mix as well. And who else is there? I'll just watch the trailer. Oh, we don't have any audio anymore, do we? Oh, hang on, because we don't have any system audio. So far it's been critically very well received. It's intense. Anyone who walks out of it or comes out of it has a holy shit kind of moment and often needs to take a seat because, VR can dramatically transform how your brain works. And this is very sensitive about thinking about the audience and how they're going to experience something. It's dense, it's multi-layered. You can watch this thing 20 times over and find new elements to the story that weren't in there in the first place. So the thing is, what we're trying to create is experiences you can go into and re-experience multiple times, and you will find more reasons to be in there. That for us is an important way of making things in VR, rather than a lot of entertainment content which is disposable. Watch it once, never watch it again. So how can we make that depth, deep and layered?
Can I ask a question? Is it sound 3D also?
Yeah, so it's a spatial sound. So what that means is the audio is emitted from, the spaces in the room as well. So as you walk up closer to Harry and you get down next to him and you can hear him. There's different levels of refraction in the room as well. So like sound reverberates off the walls in different ways as well. Yeah.
Why do you think it's better than motion capture?
Why do I think it's better than motion capture? I think motion capture still usually means you're then applying a 3D model to it as well. So that's not the actual human. It's part of the nuance in their body, but we actually have, we're a big believer in this technology as a means that in the future of mass producing VR experiences, it's also going to be used in telecommunications as a means for very quickly getting someone's real life selves and transmitting it to a VR space as well. So, motion capture is great, but it's also, we were trying to really experiment with this particular area. I don't think one thing's better than the other. It all depends on the type of experience you're trying to create, and we wanted to see if we could bring actors into the space. Wentworth, so this is something a little closer to home. If anyone remembers The Prisoner TV drama, and Wentworth is the Foxtel drama about life in a women's prison. We worked with Fremantle Media to create a two-part episode or two-part sort of mini-series of a side story in F Block. So we were able to capitalise on the end of the shoot at season 5, and we created again this intent, sort of like an immersive cinematic experience. So the idea is that you're a new cellmate, you rock up there, and you get to meet some of the other inmates. You're put in a cell. You're then target of some harassment by some of the other local prisoners. And it's a fight for your life, and it's more like a branching, multi-part narrative. And in the end, you decide, do you let someone die or do you save them? So this is just a little trailer for that.
She made a mistake, took something that wasn't hers and hid it away.
We're just on the path. Listen, we've got to go.
The wrong decision.
Welcome to Wentworth.
So this worked on roughly 1/15 of the budget of Awake, and the idea is to see, can we make this an economic model? Can we, is there enough sales that we can generate from consumers to make this worthwhile? And this is the closest we've gotten to making this a profitable model. Again, we just need a larger market. And also Wentworth is a very Australian story as well. It's not something that translates easily overseas. So, there's temptations to call it women's prison, Unfortunately, you lose a lot of the nuance around marketing at the moment in VR. You have to be quite blunt and upfront about when you market and promote yourself. So we'll get there eventually. And then Atlas Obscura VR, again, we're trying to reinvent how stories are told. This one for us is, a lot of travel documentaries or travel experiences are, there's a guide. Hi, I'm in Sydney, I'm at the bridge, isn't it tall? So many residents come through here, and it's a linear experience. We wanted to create a self-paced, interactive tour like you would go overseas yourself. How could you explore an environment at your own pace, and then delve into certain areas and explore the nuance of different areas at your own pace. So Atlas Obscura is a well-known travel brand. It's a #1 best-selling book based out of the United States. Elon Musk follows 30 people on Twitter. One of them is Atlas Obscura. We licensed this. We went to Oculus. We got some funding to put this together. And we filmed 3 interactive experiences, each one 15 minutes in length, roughly, in Romania, Italy, and the United States. And again, trying out different production techniques as well. So we use some 360 video, we use stereographic 360 stills photography, we use photogrammetry, which without boring and getting too technical about people is creating a 3D environment just based on photography, and a range of other sort of disciplines as well. here's just a little trailer for it.
The world is
A paper towel to clear up a coffee.
beneath the mundane lie incredible wonders and hidden stories. Inside a mountain in northern Italy, secret temples are home to mystical ceremonies. Under a small town in Transylvania, a futuristic chamber awaits. And in California, a maze-like house holds untold secrets. In an age where everything seems to have been explored and there is nothing new to be found, we celebrate a different way of looking at the world. Come with us, away from the familiar, into the forest, and through the unmarked door. Come see the world through new eyes. This is Atlas Obscura.
So we're trying multiple ways to monetize this content and create experiences that really up the game and provide real leadership in the space. And this was the very first project we ever did called VR Noir. It's a multi-path narrative. You're a detective trying to track down your client's lost husband. It uses a range of different mechanics to sort of pull you into the story. Filmed in Sydney. This is you exploring multiple connection points. But again, this particular project really established us on the international scene as interactive cinematic storytellers. And that's available on your phone right now if you wanted to download, if you did have a cardboard device. Watch out, Nicholas Hope, you're about to get shot. And this was a very interesting piece because people didn't know how we made it. It didn't look like video. How did you do it? People who were experts in the industry didn't know how we made it. So that meant that we were on the right track of creating this type of experience. And then, we think about how VR can be used in a group experience. So the Australian War Memorial wanted to do something unique and celebrate, the 100-year anniversary of the end of the First World War. One of the key battles in that was the Battle of Hamel, where Australia had a major role in turning the tide of the war. They wanted to create something that didn't glorify war in any sense of the word at all, but wanted to place you in it without it feeling tacky or grotesque. So this type of experience talks about the Battle of Hamel from an objective point of view, talks about the concept of the war, what was happening at the time. We then explore how General Monash invented brand new sort of strategic techniques. But you've got 50 to 100 people inside a cinema in the Australian War Memorial, all sitting with their own headset on. And everyone's having the same shared simulcast experience. So everyone's seeing the same thing, but they're able to explore and look around at their own unique rate. Then it comes to a point where we then ask everyone in the headsets, would you like to see what life was like as a soldier, as a tank operator, or as a pilot? And so then everyone gets to choose what they want, and then they all go off and have their own unique 90-second experience in each of those different roles. Now, whilst that happens, whether you're in a tank, whether you're an infantry person, the same battle is playing out in real time. So an explosion that happens on the ground as a soldier, you see over there. If you're in the tank, it happens right in front of you. And if you're on the plane, it happens directly underneath you. All that's happening in real time. Whilst the cinema speakers, the massive bass boosters just go boom and rumbling around, really enhancing the effect as well. And at the end, when everyone takes the headset off, you've created an amazing conversation point where people are going, what did you experience? Oh, I was in a tank, I saw this, let's go and do it again. So we're using VR in a sort of large mass media format to tell deeper stories.
They called it the war to end all wars. More destructive than anyone at the time could have imagined. None of its survivors are still with us, but their stories remain an important part of our history.
So again, it's about creating stories that are really suited to VR, because you could do the same thing in film, but you wanted to place you there, and that's only something that VR can do that makes you unique. I guess a big part of our success is that we managed to partner with the right type of production people. We try not to do all of the capability in-house, so we work with the likes of Animalogic to do amazing 3D modeling and animation, rather than bring all that talent in-house. We'll work with amazing sound designers. We'll bring in the right directors. We'll partner with the right people that can really amplify and make those projects bigger than what we're able to potentially do on our own. Technology partnerships are always really good because it helps us bring in some extra hardware. You know, Wacom came in on our last project to provide us with a range of sort of stylus touchscreen devices as well, which really sort of sped up our process. And then they also act as marketing partners to help amplify our message. So, you know, as much as we want to take on the partnership for credibility, it also helps really get our message to market. And as a business, any type of partnerships you can create to help amplify what you do is going to be key to success. And, you know, a lot of commercial collaboration as well. So, you know, we tend to think of our clients more as collaborators, as partners rather than a client relationship. When we come in, we want to feel like, you know, they're as much part of our team as we are as them. And that's really helped us build a strong base of amazing clients who usually come in with one small project, end up doing 5 or 6 with us as well. So around about 40% of our business is repeat, and that's something we're tending to put more effort into growing into. And a big part of what we do as well is we are technology agnostic. We try to choose the right tool to tell the right type of story. So sometimes that can be a 360 video. That is often, you know, the budget approach, and we can still use it in a compelling way, but especially if we add interactivity over the top. But then photogrammetry, you know, volumetric performance capture and 3D animation means that we are using the right tools to create the right type of experience. So again, you know, leaders in interactive cinematic storytelling. You know, we've had over 1 million app downloads of our original content. It's not been something we've been able to turn into a commercial or profitable enterprise at the moment, but it does help build out our expertise and leads to, you know, us creating innovative new products that our commercial clients then tap into. And then, you know, our enterprise clients work across all industries. We often get guys, so which vertical are you focusing on? Well, we don't, we can't. There's too broad a market at the moment, and we're able to then cross pretty much almost every industry in some way, shape or form, and we'll continue to do so. But what we're known for is our quality cinematic storytelling, and that's an important differentiator in the market when almost anyone can buy a 360 camera these days, but not everyone can tell a story and use the technology in the right way. And then a big part of what we do that underpins everything is a platform we have called StartGate. It roughly is used in 60 to 80% of our projects. It's a software platform that we developed on top of Unity that enables us to create content and publish it to all the different VR headsets. Qantas was our very first client that adopted this system, and they use it, and they've published 35 pieces of 360 content, and they're using it to market Australia as a tourist destination throughout Asia and into Europe. We target most of the VR headsets as well as phones as well, so it works in a 2D and VR menu. Everything is the same content, just repurposed in a different way. So if you don't have a VR headset, you can still engage with the content on your phone. If you do have a VR headset, same content, but experienced in a very different way. And that's an important selling point for people who want to make sure that their VR content or their investment they're making can be distributed as far and wide as they possibly can. Over 30 apps have been published with that. And then we're now moving into adding sort of more augmented reality features, targeting headsets like the Magic Leap and the HoloLens, as well as Microsoft Mixed Reality and mobile AR. And all this is underpinned by the Microsoft Azure platform as well. And then we're starting to productize this with a dashboard and other sort of analytics that customers find very, very useful. So that's kind of the sales pitch we tend to give to our clients. And along the way, we might add more custom case studies specific to their industry or that we know that are relevant to what they're looking for. So by the time we've met with them, and we'll talk about this a little bit afterwards, we've got a fair idea about what it is they're trying to achieve, and then we create a custom scenario to sort of target them. But that's the kind of the sales pitch. What did you want to do next, Ben? Did you want to...
Cool. We might take a little bit of a break.
Great.
Stretch our legs. Beck, do you want to do... Yeah. Do you want to do food now or afterwards? Do you want to do it?
We can do the food now.
Food now? All right. We're going to bring out some food, so feel free to stretch your legs. We'll probably take about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll do the how you go and build your version of this so you can get the kind of outcomes that I'm quite sure you're all very much hoping to get. About, is it 90K a week you did the last 2 months?
About that.
90K a week, you've got every possible company buying off you. It all looks pretty good, doesn't it? So we'll come back and we'll learn what the steps are to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm booming mic again. Okay, I'll have to tone it down this time. Are we sitting up here, really?
Well, we will sit up there, but maybe you want to do your piece about
Sure.
sort of the sales techniques, and then we'll go into a fireside chat after.
Yeah, so obviously Ben gave me a rundown on, I guess, the point of the series, and it's to talk about sales. It's one of those things you don't tend to think about sales until you're asked to talk about sales. A lot of it has happened organically, and it just becomes ingrained in how you do things. So stopping to think about it was actually really quite a valuable exercise. So I've kind of just created a couple of slides, and again, feel free to ask questions at any time along the way. The first thing that generally happens when I talk about VR at all is people ask, how did it get started? How did you end up in VR? Because it seems so out of this world to a lot of people as a technology. How do you? And interestingly, that's actually how it started for me. Is I went to a meetup event in Sydney in December of 2014, and I tried on the Gear VR was the first headset that just came out and had just been released, and I put it on my head and I saw dolphins swim around, and I went, it's here, it's now, this is it, it started. And I quit my job and I started a blog that very night called Start VR, because I had questions about how do you get started in VR? What skills do you need? How do you make it? How do you sell it? How do you distribute it? How does it work? I had a lot of questions, and I thought that I would do a podcast called Start VR. And that's how it started, as a podcast. But it very quickly turned into a business. Very quickly I realized that the best way to get started is to create something, is just to build something, is to have an idea and start making it happen. So the start gate, which I talked about, I always had that as idea as a platform. What if we could create something that enabled people to publish VR very easily, that they could create their own content and publish it to their own sort of channels. That was the idea. So, pretty much created a video, created this concept of how it would work, and then set about finding a team. I said, okay, well, let's put some content in it. I need to know how to make 360 video. I need to know, let's put some pieces together. So went out and found a team of people. Yes?
What's your background? Are you a developer for Unity or a video editor? What was your school before going into this?
I've always worked in broadcast media, sort of video production, and internet media, really. So I moved to Sydney from Adelaide in 1995 because I met a girl on a bus who had an email address. And so I moved cities so that I could write to her. No, unfortunately, but I still have the email address. That'll always be with me. Yes, so that was very much the early days of the internet, and it was just like the spider web, the superhighway, and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been very much wanting to combine narrative, filmmaking with digital and interactive. So along the way, I worked for a lot of digital agencies. I worked in the UK, running the Channel 4 website, did a lot of interactive television stuff, worked on Big Brother for a couple of years, developed a system that doubled their website traffic through creating an online trading card game that tied in broadcast with forums and hunting through the website. So again, trying to stimulate different activity, and that was really a fun project. And worked in digital media and Optus broadcast as well. So always just trying to cram these two things together. How can we make TV more interactive? How can we make linear visual storytelling more interactive and personal on a social level? So along the way, found someone to help build the 360 recording. They became the business partner. Someone heard that we were doing this thing. They were wanting to do something. They jumped on board. Very quickly, we had a small group of people who were building their own little fiefdoms and wanted to get into VR. And we all had complementary skill sets, and Start VR was born in August of 2015, I think it was. And that team was essential because we'd all had a lot of experience in that area, and we're all driven by the same goals of wanting to commercialize and make VR a big part of our our future moving forward. We didn't see this as a transitory technology. We saw this as a life-changing technology, and we wanted to be a part of it. We didn't want to miss out. So then the first thing was to create, a product demo, which is what I talked about. This project was by an artist called Mary Amber, who's based out here in the western suburbs, but we never finished it. But we shot all the video, we started creating the app, and that became the baseline by which Qantas then became our first major client and helped us build that piece of software out and started building out that content and infrastructure. So I guess the key lesson to all of this is just to start, don't feel like it's all overwhelming. I don't know what to do. The key is just to start and talk to people and find out someone who knows something that you don't, and they will often contribute their time and effort, and then it snowballs from there. So it started out as a podcast, and now it's a $5 to $10 million business. Yes?
Is this all bootstrapped, like with this initial team of 5?
Yep.
Working out of
Bootstrapped.
their hours and stuff like that?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, we had a rented office space, but we were still working freelance to keep the bills coming in while we built things up.
And how did you get your first customer, especially with Qantas? How do you go from startup to Qantas?
Well, they were actually our second customer. The very first one was a real estate project called Edge 28. And, friend of a friend of a friend thought, wouldn't it be great to do something in VR? And someone else wanted to do something in VR, and together it came together. And we were able to visualize, we were able to show that we had a vision for something. We found the right production partners, again, to pull the right things together. And that project, Edge 28, is still widely regarded as one of the best real estate projects in the world. And we've got so much link juice from it to our website. It accounts for 2/3 of our website traffic just from our very first project still. It's cited in PwC reports and things like that. It was very simple, it's very beautiful, very elegant. And that became the template by which we could replicate that and show quality, show ease of use. It showcased all our skill set, and they come together.
So I might just jump in there. So this was the one I saw, right, Kain? I saw this real estate one. You guys, so I've worked in this sort of XR industry for about 5 years and built up a company in this space. And I'd seen everything. I'd seen all the super duper stuff out of Hollywood and the latest and greatest and everything. And when I saw what Kain had built, I was like, this is the best quality VR stuff I've ever seen in my life. And then I could see, that sort of single piece of quality that they clearly invested, way beyond what the customer would have necessarily, needed or even paid for.
Yeah.
Right. But then, so this was one of the things we were going to bring up, right? So then that kind of created this sort of this halo sort of that you could then do everything else from. So can you talk to us a bit about how, the rationale when you're sitting there and you're like, all right, so we're going to just overbuild this thing and make it perfect.
Yeah.
So then it's essentially our marketing.
Yeah, it's under promise and over deliver is always kind of at the core of what we do. And this project is, it's a insignificant, building in St. Leonard's, but you look at it and you go, wow, that's spectacular. And the point of what we wanted to achieve with it as well is not to just go, I'm in a building. We wanted to change the way people thought about the space that they were in. How can we create an emotional impact when they're in it as well? So yes, whilst it is beautiful, what we found is that, or what we were hoping to achieve was the customer experience was like, I can imagine myself in the kitchen with that glass of red wine that's on the table. And I can imagine little Jenny sitting at the table doing her homework while little Timmy's playing Xbox on the couch next to me. And it was those simple little things that made all the difference. It was also the subtleties that most people don't think about, which is what VR offers, is how can we make it more lifelike and realistic? So it's a simple thing, but we created a day and a dusk routine. So day is what you default on. We sent up drones to capture the actual 360 views, so you have the actual views from the balcony, so it looks exactly as it would look at midday. And you can hear the traffic on the street as a low hum. But then you go to dusk mode, the lights come on, the sun is pink, and you hear cicadas sort of creep up as well. And as the user, you can almost feel the breeze coming in off the balcony, and it just changes that sense of like, I'm here. I'm living here now. Take my money. And that for us is what was an important thing about VR, was not that you can, but that this is how you do it really, really well. And as Ben pointed out, that became the halo effect of, wow, this is really going to change the way, VR is made, or how
In many
we use
ways, it
VR.
was almost the opposite of many other VR experiences I've seen. Because I remember, I'd go and try, like I'd always, see what was on. And I went down to the Samsung store and you put it on, they've got Cirque du Soleil and there's someone doing, acrobatics or whatever. And it's like, it's purely the content, right? Like all you're doing is you're looking at this person do acrobatic. Everything else is black. There's no ambience, there's nothing. Whereas this experience was like, there's sort of no content. You're in an empty room and it's all ambience. It's all like background noise and the lighting and the texture and everything, and you're just in this environment, and the only thing that's going on is the content is you imagining what you do in this environment.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what VR gives in such a powerful sense, that ability to create the peripheral vision and the surround, audio experiences. And everyone else is like, no, we're just going to take the TV thing and just stick it in here. And they're like, well, why? I'll just watch it on TV. What's the point?
That's right. That's right. You've got to do it well. Do it properly, or don't bother doing it at all. That's kind of our philosophy. So it's that sense of because it's in VR, you are transformed. You have an emotional impact, and that's what made it really kind of different. And it's an apartment complex in St. Leonard's, but it still has a lasting impact. So that being the very first project we did, it should have cost around about $150,000 to make. We sold it for 40, whatever it was. But off the back of that, we were then able to go to Qantas. And again, we pitched them some idea. So we went in, we had two ideas. One is, here's a piece of 360 content we could make. And then I was really interested in pushing this platform idea, because they already had a couple of pieces out there. And they were like, yeah, about the content, but a platform? You mean we don't have to create an app every single time we want put a piece of video up? And you mean we can have analytics? You mean we could actually have our own custom branded experience? Yes, of course you can have this amazing experience that we haven't built yet. In fact, it's here in a product we call Startgate. And yes, that was enough to get them across the line. That we'd done the real estate project, that we had this vision for this platform, and effectively they funded its development. Yeah.
So in that bootstrap mode, it can be really hard to put all of that extra effort in quality if unless all of the partners are willing to, I guess, go the extra mile. Like if you were paying $150,000 out of your back pocket for something you sold for $40,000, you wouldn't have been able to do it. So how did you, I guess, how do you motivate everyone to go above and beyond? Is it just that this will be your show reel?
Well, it's the partnership. So, everyone that was involved saw this was a big opportunity, and people are still curious about how to move into that space. So, the 3D partners that we worked with that basically made the beautiful, amazing apartment, were really keen to get into that space as well. How can they monetize it? How can they build something for their own show reel? How can we collectively, as a company, partnership and build more work along these lines as well? And for us, I don't want to get into that side. I don't want to get into doing all that amazing ArcViz stuff. It is beautiful, but it is complex and it is time consuming, and I don't want to do that. But to find partners that can do that, and then we can do the cool VR stuff, then that works out perfectly. So yeah, it's about finding people who are also interested in extending their business. Yeah.
And is that built on enthusiasm and trust rather than legal collaboration type agreement?
Yeah, it was based on trust. Yeah, handshake agreement. They gave us some office space, we all worked on it together. We all talked like we knew what we were talking about, and clearly we're going, I don't know if we're going to do it. But collaborations are just essential, really, because you can't do it all on your own. And if you try to, you will and sink yourself. So, what we put in, it cost us $150 in time. Yeah. But your time is free if you're freelancing off to the side.
So how big was the team when you started?
4 people.
How do you motivate them? All were bootstrapping, or how do you motivate them to work on this project?
Equity and salary. And it's VR. Who doesn't want to work in VR? So that's the thing. We're not working on brochure design or something like that. It was VR. It's exciting. So that obviously helps us in what we do.
So what stage you got an investor to pay the salary, or it's paying by the revenue?
So what was the question?
Salary was paid by revenue or by investor?
Oh, no. I mean, at the start, we were bootstrapped, which meant we were all working freelance jobs off to the side 2 or 3 days a week, doing what we could to sort of just keep the lights on, and then putting in all our hours and efforts and skills into it as well. So, we didn't start drawing a salary, I think, for another sort of 6 or 7 months after we launched as well. And then it's been okay.
That is very much an arts model. It's where you take your skills and you believe in them so much that you're prepared to work for free.
Yep.
And then you attract other people that want to work for free. And of course, VR is the future.
Yep. think a lot of businesses started off that way, though. You know, it's like I've got a belief, I'm going to do whatever I can, I'm going to scrap and fight. That's what bootstrapping is that I'm going to back myself in this idea until a point I can't anymore, or I go crazy or I die. And it's usually I go crazy anyway. But yes, and then idea investors are investing in you because of your craziness and your commitment to that idea, and that you've put yourself through the ringer and, you know, nearly destroyed your family just to make this business get off the ground. That's what they like. They call that gumption and tenacity. Just presenting an idea doesn't necessarily lead to investment. Yeah.
Can you take us through step by step how, like, Qantas emailed you or something, and then you got that money? Because you said you had a meeting.
Yeah.
But big companies meetings. Where you get back.
Just professional networks. Yeah. Knew someone that knew someone.
How did you get them to commit? Because was it at the meeting and they committed to something, or was it like a follow-up?
Pretty much, yeah. It was pretty much in the meeting they expressed interest and then said go away, come back, and, you know, formulate some details around the costs. But yeah, I don't want to get all zen on you kind of thing, but there's something about, you know, you pitch out to the world what you want to get and you find a way to get there, or opportunities open themselves up to get there.
If we sort of talk about that, how that sort of happened, like you weren't sort of just sitting there in a sort of a closed room somewhere waiting for people to talk to you, and then like you were building this blog. You were out there saying, hey, I want to talk about VR. I'm interested in VR. Like, let's do VR. And I'm sure you were talking about it to everyone you met.
Yep.
And then eventually it was like, oh, I've heard this other person talk about VR, and they should probably talk to you, and you know, that kind of thing.
So that's right. So from the start, my goal was I wanted Qantas as a client. They were the ones in the news that had innovated in the space in Australia. You know, putting VR on headsets on flights. I knew that was the kind of innovative client that we needed to then, you know, kickstart the rest of the business. That was my goal. I thought if we had Qantas as a client, I'd be done. I could then sit back and be fine. That was the first goal. And just through, you know, being involved in meetups and talking and presenting, you know, I met someone from Qantas, or someone I know someone at Qantas, for example, and that led to introductions, led to a series of events that meant we went in there pitching. So I wish I could say I picked up the phone and cold called, but, you know, it was through professional relationships that have built up over time. Yeah. But, you know, they had actually developed something in VR already, so there were people to speak to. Yeah.
So if we talk about sort of how that, like, one of the things we talk about too is, so it's getting that sort of special piece of content and building up those relationships. At the same time, like, not doing stuff for free, and then how, you know, one sale grows into another. So how do you sort of, like, what's the first deal look like? And how do you know that's not too big and not too small, and they're paying something that actually matters to them but not enough to block the deal, and kind of getting that sizing around that first contact rate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, we put a price on it that we thought was fair but not exorbitant. Something that was achievable but also showed that we weren't Mickey Mouse as well. So, you know, we put a budget on saying we'll develop this for $80,000. That was the budget. And they said, that's great, we'll take some time to think about it, you know, we've got to go through systems and blah, blah, blah. But it was, you know, just before Christmas, whatever it was, and we offered them, I said, well, if you can commit to doing it before Christmas, we'll take 20 to 30% off the price, whatever it was. And they went, oh, we can probably find a way to do that. We'll sneak that through. Unfortunately, Qantas's terms means, you know, you invoice and you see it sometimes 3 years later. But, you know, it was just getting in that door. And we found that just before Christmas was the perfect time to offer a discount, just because of it was them. But generally, we don't tend to offer discounts too much. We tend to price ourselves, we often are deemed more expensive in the market, but we're able to do that because we've got the quality behind us now of the work we've done and the reputation. And sometimes that's hard for clients to validate internally, and they ask us to validate that a little bit more. And then sometimes we'll say, look, just as a favour, we might offer a discount of, you know, 10 off or 10, 15 off or something like that. It's very much we're doing it as a favour, and with the idea of it's about a business partnership moving forward, but we try not to compete on price, otherwise it's a race to the bottom. Sorry, there was a guy at the back who had his...
How did you convince Qantas to essentially fund the development of Stargate while IMN still remained your clothing?
How did we do that? Smoke and mirror.
Was it the product demo that helped convince them that it was kind of existing?
Yeah, we'd already done some, because my business goal was to build this kind of system. I'd done a lot of thought around the interface design and how it might work. So I had a lot of answers to the questions, presented it in such a way that it looked like it was almost built. And we could talk to the app we'd produced previously that says, look, here's one we've already made that uses the platform. It's still a platform, even though it's really just a collection of code underneath the hood. But it's not like a software as a service that pumps out widgets at the moment. That's something we'll be moving to in the next 12 months. But clients like to see something that's done previously. And you can quite easily point, that first project has meant everything. That first project, everything has come off that. We've just finished our second major real estate project, 3 years after we completed our first one, and it almost looks exactly the same. Even though we've rebuilt the code 5 times over, a lot of the core functionality was in that first one and it still exists today. So it's very easy for a client to sort of go, oh, there's a platform underneath the hood. It just helps with a sense of security. There's an example that, here's one we produced earlier. You guys clearly know what you're talking about. And it's also how you present yourself. I'm an older guy, I'll admit. There are some years on me. And that helps because you have some reputation in the industry as well. I think it is harder if you're a younger person, just starting out. You don't have the same history of credibility, so it is a tougher sell, and all our team were quite senior at the same time, so that helped a sense of trust as well in that we're able to deliver. So you could always call up someone and say, what were they like? Sorry.
Are there any no-nos in the pitch? Are there any moments in your earlier days where you thought, we've lost this client on something I just said just then?
I think one of the key things we've learned is to let the client talk, and not to talk about yourself. It's always about the solution that is going to help the client. So, yes, when you talk about yourself too much, they don't care about you. They're trying to solve their own problem. And it's very easy often to just talk about yourself, but we tend to really focus on their outcomes, their requirements. We listen to what they've said at the start and make sure we weave that back into the conversation. So where possible, every meeting starts with so what are you looking for? Tell us a bit about your business. What are the things you encounter day to day? And you pick up on those things and use that language and terminology that they've used exactly. Shows that you've been listening, they feel more comfortable, and then it just opens things up. So, most sales processes it's a relationship game, and it's about trust. So it's rarely actually about the technology. It's about trust. At this rate, we're never going to get through. These are excellent questions, so I'll skip through these anyway. So we're our first client, and then you were one Qantas as a client, and we did that. And that helped set us up. So our general sales process is that we get a lead, comes in via email. Our website is the biggest attractor of our business. Our website, my background is in web design as well, and when you're starting out, that's always the hardest thing, is how do I make myself look bigger than I actually am? So it was always built with scale in mind, and I designed it right from the get-go to be approachable. So by which I meant we took out a lot of technology. So even though we're a VR company, we talked very much about outcomes. We talked about collaboration. We talked about partnership. We talked about feelings, and showed off examples of other people's work, not necessarily saying it was our own, but saying here's some good examples of what you can do. And blogging was an important part of that. You start to become an expert in that field, and very much about attending events. I started running the local meetup group that I first went to as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I quickly went, all right, I'm going to run this meetup now. I kind of set a goal for myself, said I'm going to be known as the VR guy in Australia, which was a bold and bullish and stupid thing to do, but taking that kind of approach meant that you do take that on, and then it comes through everything that happens on your website. Also make sure on our website that we didn't have, if you go to our website, you'll be hard-pressed to find a picture of anyone on there with a VR headset. You'll be hard-pressed to find anyone with a VR headset. You won't find anyone going, oh, wow, wow. Ah. Like that scares people off. You know, the whole point about VR is that no one wants to look like an idiot with that on their head. So that's what we learned straight away. Don't show VR headsets. Show the experience. Show the outcomes. Show the business outcomes. And that made a big difference. So the website is an amazing honeypot for us generating our leads. Lead comes in via email, usually something vague. How much for a VR? Thanks very much for that. I've got an idea. How much does it cost? So then there's a call or an email, you know, to discuss, you know, to assess the lead. So we're doing a risk analysis at that point. How much time should we really spend on it? Who is the client? You know, do they really have some budget installed for this? What's the timeline involved? And that really sort of isolates the tire kickers pretty quickly. And, you know, often we send back an email which is just like, if you can answer these questions, then we'll proceed further. Rarely does that generate anything because that then goes into a too hard basket. Or I've got $2,000 to build a VR. Can I get something? And that sort of sets everything up. From there, it's meeting face to face. So with VR, you have to experience it. You do have to put the headset on. It means everything. Working with Ben before, with Murudi, Ben talked very much about the presentation, the theatre of someone coming to your office. And we took that very, very seriously. So we now have a more theatrical process. When someone comes in, they're sitting down on a couch and there's things happening on a screen and there are VR headsets around and whatever's happening on the magazine and table is friendly and accessible and all that type of stuff. We're not a technology company, you know, we're here to help them with relationship and, you know, technology innovation. From there, they then come through to the boardroom, but we point out the different teams, who's working on stuff. You know, there are regular people. We're not really sort of technology or nerdy, you know, the people with cute things on their desk. We look accessible like an agency they might have been to. The colours are not bright and friendly. You know, it feels like a warm and inviting place to be. It doesn't feel like a tech place. And then we take them into the boardroom, and then how we show off our stuff to them is, we show them the best experiences first, and then we walk them back from that. We show them some case studies, and then it's a conversation. So getting them into the studio is essential, or sometimes we take it to them for them to experience VR. Because once they've seen it, you've got them. Once they've seen it, their minds open up and go, you could do this in VR. Have you thought about doing education in VR? Oh my God, this would be amazing for medical. This would be like, it just opens up people's minds. That's amazing. And then it's just making sure that they understand that you're there to work with them through their own issues to basically show them we can help change their business. Then there's the proposal. Then there's, here's the overview of VR. Here's kind of what you're after. Here's some case studies of stuff we've done previously that would be suitable. Here's our solution. And then here's a budget for what we can do here. Then the budget can be fixed. If we know they've got a budget to work with, we then break that down for them. This is going to cost here, the development here, the design here. It's all nice and tidy. They can see that their budget is being spent in very specific packets, even though it's still a bit vague. Or it can be just a range. It could be like, it's going to cost you between 60 and 80 at this point, or 120 to 150, based on what you sort of want. It all depends on the client understanding what they've got to work with. Now, our presentations, our proposals are quite visual, because we've found that if you just put it in a document, that document gets forwarded. That's not a very inspiring or motivating document. They're very visual, and they often talk about VR, even though the client has seen it and know what it's all about, because that document gets forwarded on to someone else. Someone else is usually the one that's making the decision about VR. And so you've got to represent yourselves quietly, without in person, and show that you are trustworthy, you have credibility, you've thought very much about the client, and that's going to work. So we've got a good template that works for us. But again, making it simple and accessible is a great way of getting the client across the line. Then when we win the deal, we don't win the deal, there's a conversation about, so what was it? What was it that got us across the line, or why did we lose it? And then that feeds into our CRM and helps us build a picture of why we're winning sales or losing sales. Sometimes it's price, usually it's just like internal things changed, or it's probably a little bit too risky for the client right now, or an event date has changed or something like that. But we rarely lose on price, even though we're more expensive than most people. And then we surprise and delight them. So, that's an important thing. If a client wins a project with us, one of the things we do is we give them a VR headset, not a cardboard one, like one that costs $300 to $400. We load it up with all our content. We download another couple of apps on there and we say, this is how we're going to send you review stuff. This is how we're going to send you designs so that you can look at it in real time. This is how you can show off to your other colleagues the types of project that you're working on. And they are usually just blown away that you've just bought them a VR headset. And they get very excited and they show their kids and then they show their colleagues and it's this great thing. But it aids us as well because it's a link into more work. You've got this viral piece that is able to be redistributed accordingly. But it helps them in the communication process and the design process. We can sort of say, okay, new designs are up, have a look. Let's talk on the phone. What did you think that was like? So market positioning.
Sorry, just before we get there, maybe just go back one. So you spoke about the leads mostly being from your website. But we also spoke about how there's another source of leads, which I guess did come through the website initially, but most of your business is actually going back to a customer you've already worked with.
Yeah.
So what's that process like, and why is one of the best sources of revenue people have already paid you, who someone might say, well, wait a sec, they've already bought something, they've had their fill. So can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have a lot of success with repeat clients. Getting someone to invest in VR or AR is tough. You know, they've taken a big leap. They're investing in a technology that is changing rapidly. It's difficult for them to get there, but the results are usually amazing. So I'll talk about it a little later on, but we work hard to try and make our clients look great within their organizations. If we can do that, then that just then spreads like a virus. So I'd say roughly 40 to 50% of all our clients are because of recurring work. And even though that first project, we might be a little, might be lower hanging fruit, just getting something in often leads to more work. Again, because it's effective, it's visually stunning, people love it, it creates some great word of mouth, and we've made them look good. And the second part is, I guess, the StartGate platform helps embed an idea that they've already made a commitment to something and there's value in creating more content because they've got a platform for rolling that out even more. So having something we can embed in their business that they now own means they're more likely to then generate more content off the top of that as well. So I wish I could tell you a story about an amazing account management layer we have in place that is generating more sales out of those clients. We're finding it's just doing it on its own. That was great, that was fantastic, you guys were brilliant, we've had this other idea, can we do X and Y? The answer is, of course, yes, of course we can. So once they realise that we're there as a partner and we've helped them through something that would have been a difficult transition or difficult to execute, they're likely to just sort of come back. It's very much about relationship marketing than anything else. But moving forward, we're actually going to try and put an account management layer in. We're obviously a small company. It's hard to, you've got to be careful about where you spend your money as well. So investing in an account management layer, that's got to prove itself out in a certain amount of time as well. Yeah.
Do you use a formal CRM in this process, like a company model live drive or something like that?
Yeah, we use pipe drive. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the other important thing is to think is you're going to have competitors. No matter what you do, you're going to have competitors. So thinking about your position in the market. We've always tried to make sure that we can be trusted. So we deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. If we stuff up, we tell the client. If we make mistakes, we're honest and upfront. That's a difficult thing to really push inside a business as well, because the natural reaction is just to say it's not my fault. But there have happened a couple of times where there have been some monumental cluster errors, and being completely upfront with the client has just made them trust you more. That you've gone to them and they know that you've got their back and they've suddenly got yours.
Can you talk us through how you'd manage one of those situations? And
yes. How do we manage the situation? I sat down with the person in mind and sort of said, that was incorrect. We have stuffed up. I can't really go into too much, but...
Sure, I suppose I'm more talking about the client and like how do you sort of go there and prepare them, and Because you're not just going to be like, oh yeah, it's broken, but we're up front, see you later. Like,
No,
how do
look,
you kind of walk them through that?
you take them out to dinner, you know, you get them a little bit drunk, you laugh about the good times, and then you go, whoops, I cheated on you. No. It's usually, you know, it's just being very upfront. It's getting in contact with the client, sort of saying, look, you know, I'm really sorry this particular thing has happened. We weren't expecting it to. This happened internally for these different reasons. We're very, very sorry. But this is our actions. This is how we're going to solve this moving forward. We're going to do X and Y. So we usually don't go into that situation without having a solution ready to go. And that's usually either eating the profit or, you know, eating our own time or solving it in some way, shape or form. But most clients are pretty understanding of that type of approach. And the easiest way is just to pull the Band-Aid off, I think, yeah.
I guess as employers, there tends to be a expectation that staff will work, you know, their hours and fair work and all of those things. So there is the risk that you end up being the one that's caught wearing one of the employees, you know, stuff ups when they do that. I mean, how do you manage in those small sorts of teams a sense of, you know, ownership of an individual of the stuff up and them putting in the extra yards to correct it, or do you just find that the people that you work with have that personal sense of?
We try to create that type of culture where people feel they can make mistakes. I mean, we're working in an industry where everything is so new, nothing can be done the right time. Is just finding the right way to have that conversation with them to make sure they've seen the error, work out ways to solve it. We usually don't reprimand people. It's not a high stress space. And we try and create a culture where people enjoy working there as well. It's hard to retain talent, so we just want to make sure that people are learning from mistakes and moving forward. But, you know, because of that, and because we have that level of trust and dialogue with our clients, we have the same thing with our staff as well. So we can be honest and transparent about things, and then everyone's happy with that. So it's if you're not, I guess the thing is, you know, if your staff know that you're being honest with the clients, then they know you're being honest with them as well. So it's got to work both ways. Yeah. Hope that answered that question, I think. Proof, again, so, you know, awards, I've never liked entering awards. I've always thought they're a waste of everyone's time and money. But it's not actually about getting patted on the back by the market. It's more about clients actually sort of just going, oh, okay, great, you've won one of them. You guys know what you're talking about. So it does help. And all those sort of laurels and things just help your credibility, along with, you know, social proof of the actual work that you're doing, and having real projects as well have made a big difference. Being personable, being approachable, again, it's that whole idea of it not being about technology, it's about us being outcome driven. And as a business, we're very approachable, we're friendly, we're laid back, sometimes inappropriate, but that's okay because people know that we're approachable and friendly. Reducing the fear, again, so it's not about the technology. How can we take away the pain of wanting to commit to this type of technology, which is still so new? Yes, and then it's kind of like, and what else would you like to do? And what else can we do for you? How else can we undersell something but then over-deliver on a project as well? So could we squeeze in a little Easter egg? So that Edge 28 project, for example, there's a little Easter egg where if you look up in the sky out the window, you're suddenly floating above the city, looking down on it kind of thing. It's a bit of like a freak out kind of moment. The small little Easter egg like that has a massive impact. You know, the client loved it, customers love it. It's a small little thing. We had another Easter egg on that one where there was a giant spider behind you in one of the bedrooms. They didn't like that one quite so much. So you've got to pick your battles. But yeah, surprising and delight is important. Know who you are. So again, we're about design, story, and technology in that order. That's the type of thing our clients are looking to hear. They know that technology is difficult, but we take care of it for them. We're passionate about what we do. We are quality and quantity. We're at the bleeding edge, and we can say no to work as well. I think that's an important thing, is being able to say no to a client or saying no to work. And particularly in VR, it's like, well, we think you could actually do this in a flipbook animation, or this is better as a website, or this is better as a video. I don't think you should spend your money with us. And they respect that. And then chances are I'll turn around and go, what if I give you more money? Okay, all right, you can do it now.
So just on that,
Yeah.
if we go back there for a second and saying no. So basically what you're saying is, look, there's some things where you sort of don't necessarily feel you can give the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's because, you know, you're good at the kinds of things you can do, and you're not trying to do other kinds of things. You're not trying to jam everything into it.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about how, you know, you've got a process, you've got a deal size you like to work with, and then this client came along and wanted all these different kinds of things. And obviously, there's a lot of time there's a good reason to say no to that. When is it a good time to say yes to that?
If it's a client, if there's a way that you can manage it in such a way that it still meets their objectives, it's not going to break your team, it's not going to break anyone, really, then there might be a way around. Or bringing in a production partner.
So how do you sort of figure
trust.
that out? Because you mentioned this sort of much bigger deal that you managed to achieve by saying yes when they had extra requests, and there was sort of pushback, and you had to kind of navigate that one.
That was very much about timelines. And we wanted to do something amazing, and the timelines were ridiculously short. So we did say no to that. They were, are you sure you want to say no to that? And going, yes, we don't think we'll be able to deliver at the quality we think we could do it within the timeline. And we're really worried that you might hurt yourself as well. At the time, it was a critical part of our business as well. Like, saying no to this project could have broken the business. Like, maybe we should take it on. Maybe we should take on that higher kind of risk piece. But we didn't. The client greatly respected us telling her the truth. She was able to share that back to her client as well. And then off the back of that, we won another $300,000 worth of work through a different client, but just by virtue of that we had her back as well. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were after.
Well, we were sort of talking about that story earlier about how, you know, you're saying like you've got your way of doing business, and then sort of knowing when to kind of change it up, because there's a lot of sort of startup, I guess.
Oh, that was more to do with the sales process.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, we've got our MD pretty much brings in most of the sales. 80 to 90% of our sales come through this one person. He's got a very relaxed way of dealing with things, and his proposals are sometimes fast and loose, but they're friendly, accessible, all this type of stuff. This one particular sales lead came in, which I saw was a big opportunity. He was like, yeah, I'll just do a blah, blah, blah. We'll just flick out the thing. And it was like, no, this is going to need a lot more attention. We're going to need to get more in the weeds on this. We're going to need to show them a specific response to their brief. Kind of argued a bit on that. I don't think it's going to work, Kain, but you know, I insisted on a certain way, and put a lot more detail into a brief or a proposal we might normally would. A lot more examples, gave away a lot more of our intellectual IP. But in the end, that was a competitive pitch, and we won it over 3 or 4 other companies, and they're based in Melbourne, and we're based in Sydney, and so all the other companies were based in Melbourne, and we were more expensive by about $70,000 as well. But again, it was because we came in with a detailed approach. It was because we really went the extra mile and listened to them, and you know, worked harder to win that particular brief and customise what we did, meant that we actually won that project. We took a bit of a hit on the first one. It's a $150,000 project rather than a $250,000 project, but we know this is a $500,000 client as well, and the spin-off of this is going to be internationally huge as well.
So you've mentioned, you got up here knowing who you are, but it sounds like the way you made that decision was knowing who that customer was. Because if
Correct.
someone else had put that through, you'd be like, oh yeah, just business as usual, that's all fine.
Correct.
So like, you've invested a lot of time in figuring out who these people are, how they like to work, what their expectations are you going to meet them, are you going to need to sort of change it up? So what does that look like to actually get inside the customer's mind like that? Like, why are you able to make that decision with confidence? Like, how did you learn enough about the customer to actually go, no, this is how it's going to work this time?
Well, we went out of the way to get to know them personally. Again, it's not about the technology or the money on the table, it's about the relationship. So, you know, we went down to Melbourne and spent at least a day with them, went through and did their training program, actually went into their business and saw how they operated. So we're able to draw upon that, which then fed directly back into the proposal. Again, it's all about that language, and understanding their business needs means that they feel like they're going to trust you and to do all of that kind of stuff. So it's about going above and beyond to make sure that you could, you know, integrate yourself into them, into their lives, so that they felt that you were definitely a partner. you weren't just a supplier, and that made a big difference there. I know you're trying to get at something else.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to sort of understand like what the difference is in that deal there. And so,
Yeah.
because some people, would say, oh, look, I'm just going to, analyze it on the back end and this, that, and the other. But what you're doing, like, no, you're going to go down, you're going to fly to Melbourne, you're going to go and spend a day with these people.
Yeah.
And like really, embed with them. So
I think because I looked at the opportunity and saw it to be a bigger opportunity than maybe my head of sales looked at it. My head of sales looked at it just another sales thing in amongst the sea of other things that they were working on, and I saw there was a particular opportunity with this company that if we could win them.
So if we look at you've got a lot of people to organise, you've got all these sort of projects, you're going to have multiple up in the air at the same amount of time, and there's a lot of pressure to kind of get that quality out. How much of your time are you spending, like either on the phone with or physically with a customer, like learning about their needs versus sort of operating the company and the business and organising it?
Probably about 15 to 20% of my time with the customers as well. So even though the salesperson or the producer may be the major contact with the client, I'll make sure that I'm there at critical moments as well to be involved in the conversation, help massage the relationship. So that's certainly right at the start.
It's like a couple hours a day, or in a startup day, it's like 3 hours a day, or a day a week. So and you're not even the person spending necessarily the highest proportion of your time with the customer.
Yeah. But again, it's about relationships and it's about trust. So, if the CEO is spending time with the customer as well, or they're brought in on occasions as well, it helps the customer feel very valued. And I've got some experience and insight to bring to it as well. So it also helps me make sure that the project's on track as well and that we're getting the quality and everything else. So there are lots of plates to spin, I guess. It's just making sure it's all working the way you're hoping and planning it to get the right type of outcomes. But it's hard though. I'd rather spend more time. I'd rather spend a lot more time with the client than I can, but I also need to spend a lot more time on the business than I can as well. So it's a very hard balance.
And how do you protect your ideas? Because ideas aren't copyrighted, so you're pitching amongst other people. Does it ever happen where an idea you've had, they share that to your client and say, can you do this? That's completely moral.
One of the things I learned early on was that everyone's got a great idea, and ideas aren't worth anything unless they're executed on. So anyone could steal your idea, but not everyone can do the execution that you can do. And that's what we do. We bring that passion, we bring the execution to our ideas as well. So yes, anyone can do it, but no one does it the way we do it. So I'm less worried about that.
Sure. So just before, we've got about sort of 5 or 10 minutes left.
Oh, right.
So was there anything else you wanted to run through, or do you want to just cut to
No,
questions?
can we use CRMs, talk about the customer, understand. Look, the key is understanding the customer and understanding their pain points and who internally are they, what do they need internally to get this across the line? What's going to make them feel great and look great internally? If you can make that happen, then you've got an amazing project. And it'll lead to many more. We use some basic tools, nothing really sort of crazy. Pipedrive is really good, sort of simple to use CRM. We're using HubSpot beforehand as well, even though it does exactly the same thing. The sales team didn't really sort of like it, whereas it was a bit prettier in Pipedrive, and we started using CrackPipe. So yeah, I guess for us moving forward is about revitalising our brand, turning our Startgate platform and productizing it a lot more. We're going to do a lot more sort of marketing automation to see if we can speed up that process, and some experiments around the speed in which we can respond to customers as well, or if we can address some of those key concerns and maybe turn those tie kickers into stronger leads. Going after specific market segments as well with an offer as well. That's a core part of what we're going to do. Adding an account management layer, that's something else we think is really important because it's happening organically. What if this is completely untapped and we could take that up to 60 to 80% of our business? That could be quite amazing. And doing a lot more work around conversion metrics. My background is as a growth hacker as well, but it's not really happened in this sort of space yet. I want to get a lot more granular around conversion rates and understanding our sales process, the average sales lead and lifetime value and all that kind of stuff as well, which we could probably talk about for another hour, not 5 minutes. But so yeah, things we've learned. This is probably what I should put the stuff up at the front. One market at a time. So we just focused on Sydney. We tried to break into the UK market well too early. It was just a waste of time. We tried to break into the US market, but that's been a difficult market for us as well. So we've just reconsolidated back into the Australian market, and we're now starting to expand into the Melbourne market as well. Every pitch is competitive, treated as such. Even though you think the customer might only be talking to you, you should need to be presenting. You're presenting not just to that customer, but to their internal stakeholders as well. That's why that proposal format I talked about before is so important. Don't just send them an email with some prices and numbers in it. Treat every customer with great care, because every project is competitive. And we learned from a client very recently, they just lost a $2 million deal because they thought they were the incumbent, they thought they had it, didn't care too much, and then they lost $2 million worth of business. Don't bow down on price. Hold yourself, but then offer a discount as a mate's rate. I know it is effectively slashing your prices, but just make sure that the customers understand the actual value of what it is you're giving them, and therefore what the value is and the discount that you're giving them as well. And that'll help get them across the line rather than just giving them a reduced price. Try not to look like a startup, which is tough, I know. So that comes down to the language you use, I think, sometimes as well. And make your client look like a legend. That's kind of it. Thanks.
Cool. I think we've got time for maybe one or two questions, depending on how much you want to expand on them.
By putting the customer slide up, you just whiz through the customer slide. And I'd just like to see the points. Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Yes?
Do you often pitch your own ideas to brands, or is it usually the other way around? They have an idea already? Or, and you please?
If a brand has come to us with an idea, we will make sure that we represent their idea back to them in a way that matters to them, and then offer them an alternative, which may be our own idea. But we will often go to brands with our own ideas as well. But usually, we are at the end of the food chain that, someone's got something, they're looking for a supplier, and they come to us rather than us being actively going out to companies with an idea. I think that's a tougher sell. Qantas was one of the rare occasions where that actually worked. Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts in terms of VR, obviously great technology. How do you best pitch it to a generation, I guess it can be older generations that aren't used to wearing goggles and things like that? Where do you see that going? What's the best way to pitch it?
No one's used to wearing goggles at the moment. So again, putting it on, they see everything unfold before them. So you've just got to get a headset onto someone, and then they realise the full potential. Otherwise, they just think it's 3D TV, or it's they've got a preconceived idea about what VR is. It's practically trying it out. But we are looking at a market segment where you want the younger generation to be adopting this. The millennials, Gen Xers are really quite into it. Boomers probably less so, but that's also being used in aged care facilities right now as a valuable tool for a lot of different ways. There's no easy answer to that one, unfortunately. Cool, great.
Cool. All right, well, let's give Kain some appreciation. Thanks for taking your time to come and share these sales techniques with everyone. I hope this is really useful for people. I hope this is helping you get more of an understanding of how you're going to drive your own businesses forward. We know that the most important thing for startups is having the resources to actually keep moving forward, and that's why we're running these Sales Master Series of people who actually have gone out there, done the actual selling, and know what it's really like. So this is, I believe, our second session for this year. The next session's coming up on the 8th of March. Cheryl Mack, who's the CEO of StartCon, will be giving that session. That's obviously the biggest conference for startups in Australia. There's thousands of people coming there, hundreds of speakers each year. And so Cheryl's going to come and share how she sells everything from the $100 tickets right through to the $100,000 sponsorship. So quite a variety of things going on. So please do stay tuned and go and sign up for that one if you'd like to get more insight in how to sell. In terms of this session here with Kain, you're going to get a feedback form, so please let us know how it was for you, and we'll share that with Kain as well, so we can make sure that we're giving the content in the right kind of way, and what's been most useful for you. In terms of Launchpad as a whole and the SID West program, please do go and talk to Beck and Inu and Yovna, who are here, and Beck's up the back there, the stripy shirt. So Beck's the one managing our whole accelerator, putting it all together, and Inu and Don, who isn't, there's Inu, and Inu and Don run the actual the entire program in the space. So please do go and talk to them and learn more about how you can take part in everything that's coming at Western Sydney University and SID West. So thanks very much for coming.
Thanks, Ben.